Welcome into Southeastern 14 presented by Bearded Iris. We are doing SEC baseball power rankings as we have now passed the midway point of the SEC season and we start at 14. Only in the SEC can you win the national title and go to last in your league the next year. That's what Ole Miss has done. The defending national champions are a league worst 3-12. Losing a series with Mississippi State and Starkville this weekend, they are the only team not to win a series in league play so far. Now, if you're looking for a silver lining, Ole Miss's minus 38 run differential is better than Mississippi State and Auburn, so there's that. But I don't think people in the Magnolia State are feeling much better even with that stat. Okay, 13 Mississippi State. And I could have moved the Bulldogs up higher, but I want to see a little bit more out of the pitching. Now, that's been the story for State. It has now taken 2 straight series plus 1 game from South Carolina, and in that, the pitching has fueled that. Mississippi State has allowed 17 runs in its last 4 Southeastern Conference games and 20 overall in its last 5 total. I think that includes a midweek game with maybe UAB. State has got a huge series coming up with Auburn this weekend. Win that one, and the NCAA tournament may be on the table because Mississippi State's RPI is in the top 30, might even be inside the top 25 as we do this on Monday. I have not checked today. Number 12, Georgia. The Bulldogs took one from Florida this weekend in Gainesville. The pitching's been a little bit better. Good news for Georgia. It's got 3 of its final 5 series at home. Of course, last time Georgia was at home in SEC play, it got a big series win over Kentucky. Number 11, Auburn. Now, Auburn is the classic resume is one thing and the numbers tell you another, because Auburn has got out-of-conference series wins over Indiana and Southern Cal. Those are good, and those could very much come in handy if Auburn can get itself in NCAA tournament position through the end of the regular season and maybe win a couple games in Hoover. Tommy Vale gave them a lift this weekend, but Auburn has allowed 128 runs in SEC games. That's not good. That's not a formula for winning baseball, and it's especially not good when you've got South Carolina and LSU to come on your schedule. Number 10, the Missouri Tigers, who are still having trouble winning away from home, but did get one this weekend versus Texas A&M after getting obliterated in those first 2 games. 3 of Missouri's final 5 series are at home. All of those are winnable. They will come against Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia. That may determine Missouri's NCAA fate. If it can get on a heater and maybe get to 13 wins in the league, I think the Tigers will have a shot, and it's going to need to win all those series at home and maybe even sweep 1 or 2 of those. Number 9, Texas A&M. We mentioned A&M obliterating what I think is a good Missouri team this weekend. The Aggies have now won 3 series in a row, each of those 2 games out of 3. Now, the problem for the Aggies is when I'm looking at teams, I tend to favor teams that can pitch and defend over teams that can hit, because good pitching a lot of times can stop good hitting, although in this day and age with the bats and the balls, good luck to you trying to stop anybody. But anyway, the Aggies have allowed 118 runs in the SEC. That is 3rd worst in league play, and just cannot find anybody who can consistently pitch in that rotation, and that's been a problem for Coach Jim Schlossnagle. Okay, number 8, I've got Tennessee. I debated the Vols and the Aggies, but at 8 and 9 spot, A&M's actually 2 games ahead. Of course, the Vols took 3 of 3 from A&M earlier in the season in Knoxville. Here's the other thing. Even though Tennessee is 5 and 10, they're only minus 15 in runs scored. And, of course, the schedule has been brutal. Tennessee may play the toughest conference schedule in the history of college baseball by the time this thing is done. I'm not kidding about that at all. The series so far have been at Missouri, where Missouri is really tough to beat, A&M in Knoxville, at LSU, Florida in Knoxville, and at Arkansas. The good news for Tennessee, Chase Burns was better over the weekend. Will that be the spark the Vols need? I guess we'll wait and see. Number 7, Alabama. The Crimson Tide finally got an SEC series. It is 6 and 9 overall, but it's got a +7 run margin in SEC games, which suggests the Tide are better than that record. Alabama, of course, got that series win against Auburn. Again, I'm biased in favor of teams that can pitch. Alabama has allowed 77 runs in league play. That is 4th in SEC games and just 2 off of second place South Carolina. Okay, number 6, People are going to have an issue with this, I'm sure. I've got the Florida Gators there at 6. And I know D1 baseball has Florida at 3 in the country. First of all, I don't really consider the polls. I've got my own opinions based on the research I do. And building on that pitching comment, Florida has given up 194 runs this year in all games. And I know that it plays in a bit of a bandbox, maybe that doesn't help, but I don't like that. Florida's Pythagorean record, which takes the runs scored and the runs you've allowed and says what your record would generally be, suggests the Gators should be 27-10, not 30-7. Now, look, Florida right now would be a top 8 national seed. I get it. And there's a difference between resume and what I think you are. But the Gators, who get to skip playing LSU and Arkansas, they can thank the schedule makers for that this year, have the toughest part of the schedule ahead. South Carolina, Kentucky, Vandy, all on that slate. We'll see how the Gators finish it out. I have a feeling they can pitch better than they've shown. In fact, I know they can. But right now, the snapshot of where they are, I just don't like the way the pitching has been inconsistent. Florida struggles to throw strikes, and all the teams ahead of them have better pitching staffs right now, in my opinion, although, again, that could change. Florida certainly has a ton of talent on the mound. It just has not clicked quite yet. Number 5, I've got Kentucky. The Cats' 72 runs allowed in the SEC is the second best number in the league. That plus 38 run margin is the third best. Huge home series coming up for the Cats with Texas A&M. I like the way Kentucky matches up. They can just small ball you to death and really challenge you. And with the runners A&M allows on base, I think that's a good matchup for Kentucky. And a win there would certainly keep Kentucky in the hosting conversation, if not the top 8 overall picture. Number 4, Arkansas. I've moved the Razorbacks up this week after a series win over Tennessee. The pitching is really coming on. Injuries have forced Dave Van Horn maybe to use guys in situations that he probably would not have used them in if Arkansas had a full deck of pitching. And you know what? That's been a good thing. These guys have responded, and they're getting a little bit better every weekend. Now, what makes me a little nervous, plus 15 run margin, that's a little low for a team that's 11-4 in the league. But, guys, Arkansas is playing better every weekend, and that's not a team I don't think anybody wants to face anywhere, anytime at the moment. Number 3 is South Carolina, and had Carolina won the series at Vanderbilt, I might have moved Carolina into the number 1 overall spot. In fact, I probably would have. Get this, Carolina is 2-3 against LSU and Vandy the last 2 weekends, but it's got a plus 10 run margin in those games. That's hard to do, and that's also indicative of an elite team. My problem with Carolina kicked the ball all over the yard this weekend against Vandy, but it also did not have Noah Hall. Of course, Vandy had some pitching issues we'll get to in a minute, but it's got a plus 206 run margin on all games. That is second best in the league, behind LSU, which I've got at 2. LSU's plus 215 run margin on all games is the league's best. LSU has won series against 5 teams in the SEC that may all head to the NCAAs, depending on what the committee would do with Tennessee right now and what maybe it will do with Tennessee. The Vols have got an interesting slate ahead. The polls have LSU 1, as do many computers. My beef with the Tigers, and I get that there have been pitching injuries, but a lot of teams are in that position right now. LSU's given up 96 runs in SEC games, and it's got a plus 24 run margin. So LSU's had a terrific season, and it's got a great resume, but the team I've got in front of them is Vanderbilt. And I know Vandy has played one of the easier slates in the league, probably the easiest, maybe the easiest. But it's 2 games ahead of the SEC field. It is plus 84 in runs scored in league games. Next best team in the league is Carolina at exactly half that. Vanderbilt has scored more runs than anybody in the league in SEC games, has allowed fewer runs than anybody in the league in SEC games, and it is tied with A&M for the fewest errors in SEC games. And, oh, by the way, Vandy beat South Carolina this weekend without Hunter Owen, one of the top starting pitchers in the league, really without Carter Holton. He pitched, but I think they rushed him back, and that did not go well. So beating South Carolina with maybe your 2 best pitchers on the shelf was really impressive. Toughest part of the schedule coming up, road trips to Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama. Tennessee, Alabama, and I forget the third one, Florida. Home series with Kentucky and Arkansas. We'll see if that holds up. Anyway, that's been your power rankings heading into Week 10. I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you again soon.